And welcome back, guys. It is Brian again, and today I want to talk about The Last Jedi. Um, I was very excited for this movie. I saw it last week. It's we're past Christmas now. I saw it prior to Christmas, and I was very excited. I love Star Wars. I've lived Star Wars since I was a child. I've played multiple games, read books. Obviously, you see me playing X-wing and Armada. Um, I mean, it's my life. Literally, if you walked around my house right now, um, you would be praising my fiance for being able to put up with the amount of Star Wars memorabilia that we have around the house. So don't take anything in this video um, as me not being a Star Wars fan, because I am. I love the franchise. Take it as I'm sad to where the direction of the franchise may be going, and maybe I'm no longer the audience that Star Wars is targeting. And that just it hurts. It makes me sad. So, Last Jedi as a film, independently as a film, if you were to look at it, um, not as a Star Wars film, but as, say, a sci fantasy movie, I think it was a pretty fun film. I was entertained. There was some things I didn't like in the pacing. I thought there was a lot of cuts, which kind of took me out of some scenes. You'd be building up some tension, and all of a sudden we'd be cutting to another scene of a character on another planet, and I felt like that was a little too much because you just lost the tension that you were building as a producer or director. So I was a little questioning on that. Um, Visually beautiful movie. In fact, probably one of the most beautiful Star Wars films made. Um, CGI was great. The space combat was really good. I enjoyed all parts of that. Um, but then as a movie again, parts of the movie that one of the reasons why I'm losing some faith in it were like the jokes. I felt like the jokes were falling flat, and they were throughout the movie. So I have some notes here. Um, so because I want to make sure I stay on focus and stay on track on some of the points that I felt like I want to talk about, because I want to get some of your guys' opinions on it. The biggest thing is I thought was The Force Awakens was a good movie. It was not a perfect movie by any means, but it was a good movie. It was a good Star Wars movie. It at least made me feel like, yes, I'm back in this world. And while yes, it could be a rehashing of A New Hope, it still made me believe that this was a new, unique story in Star Wars with some characters. I liked Rey. People called her a Mary Sue. And I didn't mind it for The Force Awakens because they had some character subplots that they were building that were potentially going to be answered in future movies. Where was her power coming from? I'll be honest. I told multiple people that I did not want Rey to be related to Luke or to really anyone in the core family, like the core Anakin Skywalker heritage. I had doubts that Obi-Wan or a Kenobi was the father. But being related is Star Wars. The entire movie franchise is about family and your heritage and that bloodline. So going into Last Jedi, there was a lot of questions about who's Rey's family, and in fact, they hinted at it multiple times in the movie. Luke asks Rey, you want to know who your family is? Rey goes into the dark side room to answer the question because it obviously bugs her, and then we get it dropped on us. Your parents were no one. They were drugs. They were slavers. They were drinkers. Whatever. They left you. They sold you. You are no one, Rey. And could that be real? I mean, is that possibly? Are they gonna answer that question in the third movie? Are they gonna say, okay, you know what? That was just to throw you off. In fact, Rey is now cousins or brother and sister with Kylo Ren, with Ben Solo. Who knows? But going on with that from there, the first interaction, the meeting between Luke Skywalker and Rey, at the end of The Force Awakens, that's obviously a cliffhanger. It's a huge moment. What's going to happen? Rey is presenting her father, or Anakin, or Luke's father, Anakin's lightsaber to him, a saber he lost by his father cutting off his hand on Bespin. How was the saber found? Where did it go? How did it find itself into Maz Kanata's Katina locked in that box? Why was Obi-Wan Kenobi calling to Rey to open that saber? All these questions. There are so many questions from Force Awakens. And Luke grabs the saber and he just throws it over his shoulder as a joke. That killed me. Scenes like that killed me because it removes the tension, it removes the thought and the wonder, and then Luke just stomps off like a weird old hermit. I was like, is this a movie that I've been waiting years for to see? I didn't think so. So I really didn't like the first meeting we see with Luke with throwing the lightsaber off. And then going with that lightsaber, you have all these questions still of where did this saber come from? What's the meaning? What's the connection between Rey and the saber? And then it gets destroyed, and it's pointless now. So there's no basically the idea is, and so the entire theme of The Last Jedi was forget your past, we're starting new. And here goes the saber that we've all cherished for many movies, destroyed, forget it, because that doesn't matter, because this is the new Star Wars, we're starting new. So that crushed me. I have the Knights of Ren. Where are the Knights of Ren? What happened to them? I was expecting in the flashbacks to the temple with Kylo and Luke's flashbacks that we were going to see some Knights of the Ren. Go back to that scene that we saw in The Force Awakens with them all circling around and it was raining. What happened? Who are they? We don't know. Doesn't touch on it. I will be very disappointed if they never touch on it in the next movie, but right now there's no idea if they will or will not. I don't know. So that's another drop subplot that I'm very upset about. And then I have the last one was Luke's attitude on the island in general bothered me. It wasn't the Luke that I remembered from Return of the Jedi. I felt like Luke was a man who would do anything for his family, do anything for his friends. Remember when he was being trained by Yoda on Dagobah, that knowing he wasn't ready, but because his friends were in danger, he was going to risk everything he could to go and help them. On the planet of Endor, he went on a suicide mission to the second Death Star because he believed his father was still redeemable. So this is a man who is very selfless, doesn't think for himself, wants to better his family and his friends because he's lived his whole life without family other than his uncle and aunt. But he didn't have his father, he didn't have his mother, he didn't have his sister. So when he finds them, it's very special to him. And then when Rey says, we need your help, Han needs your help, who's now dead, Leia needs your help, and he goes, no, not my problem, not my deal. It just didn't feel natural. It felt forced. Mark Hamill went on record saying that he really didn't care for the direction that they chose to take Luke in this film. Now, he has recanted that interview and that statement, saying that he, after seeing the movie, likes where they took Luke. I don't know how much I believe that. I feel like that could be Disney, threatening Mark and say, you know what, we need you to give some more good press for our film because your comments and the comments of the fans are kind of negative, and we need to turn that around. But it didn't feel like Luke to me. It didn't feel like the man that I had come to love and to emulate as a child. So another question I had with this drop subplot, though, with relating to Luke is, why leave a map if you need him, but then refuse to help? The entire Force Awakens plotline was finding Luke Skywalker, who has left a hidden map for the Resistance to find him in their time of need. That's the entire reasoning. And then the First Order is trying to find Luke for whatever reason. We don't really know. But they are. Probably because they want to kill him or something. I don't know. Or Kylo Ren wants to avenge his anger towards Luke. But then when we get to Luke, we've used the map to find him. The dude's... He wants nothing to do with it. It just doesn't make any sense. At all. It's really a head scratcher. So again, okay, so that's the end of the Anakin Luke subplots that I felt were a little dropped. Too much humor. So the movie starts off. It's got a good intro. I feel like now the Resistance name makes sense. In The Force Awakens, I didn't really understand the point of the Resistance. Because the Republic existed. They were the ruling body. And then you have the Resistance First Order, which to me is more of a resistance because they are fighting back for what they believe should be the true, the true governing body, the empire, the imperial side, the empire. So they're kind of the terrorist organization. And then you have this small section of vigilantes, the resistance group, who's resisting the First Order, who's resisting the Republic. Didn't make sense. I felt like to me, it was like, well, we need to have the rebels and we need the Imperials, but we can't call it rebels, Imperials again, so resistance and First Order, whatever. But this movie, now that the Republic's been wiped clean with the third Death Star destruction, they're all gone. So now we actually have the First Order, who somehow has now had complete control of the galaxy. They're now the ruling body within the last 5 minutes of the world's blowing up. And so now the Resistance actually feels like a resistance because now they're resisting their hostile takeover. So there we go. The hostile takeover. That's the only way that I can kind of build this together, is thinking it that way. But I hate having to make up answers to make sense of what your story is. And as a director, as a film producer, or as an editor, it's their job to make it so it's more clear. I thought that was a bad drop. But anyways, the beginning of the movie, backtrack now. The very first scene with Poe Dameron, where he sends a telecom message to General Hux. It's just a joke. It's campy humor. And really killed the tension of what that scene was. Obviously, you have a lone fighter going against a dreadnought or a Star Destroyer. I feel like it was just a Star Destroyer. No, it was a dreadnought. And there's a lot of tension there because the Resistance is currently trying to save their life. And so you're building up this tension. They kill it with some campy, dumb humor. And I was like, what? It just took me, whoa, it's like you just got hit with like a reality block. Like, whoa, I'm actually in a movie and I shouldn't be realizing this. When you're watching a movie, you want to be drawn into it. So it pulled me out. Really didn't like the feeling of losing my feel, what I'm trying to say. And then the humor didn't stop. Then you get Hux doing a really awful monologue about killing him, and it just goes from there. And throughout the film, going to, like, say, Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber, every time there was a moment of tension, it's like Rian Johnson basically said, okay, our target audiences are 9-year-olds, and they can't handle the tension and the pressure that this scene is creating, so we need to loosen it up. We need to lighten it up. And I just didn't like that. And so the entire film was hitting on that. Let's see. So I have here the casino scene. The entire casino scene. If you watch reviewers talking about the movie, they're going to slam that the casino scene was the worst freaking part of this movie. It was awful. Too much CGI. Freaking stupid characters. A freaking fat opera singer singing. Like, that was stupid. I'll admit it. But if you... okay, let me tell you my opinion of the casino scene. It didn't fit in this film at all, and it felt like it was a subplot that didn't need to happen. In fact, Finn and Rose could be completely cut from this film, and there would be no differences with the ending of the movie. You could cut out entirely every scene they have, as well as the casino scene, and everything would still flow just the same. So that's unfortunate because Finn was a very big character. Here they're trying to implement Rose and say, hey, here's a character that we want people to care about. To be honest, I cared more about Rose's sister who died heroically. And that was a character that I thought was going to be Rose on the BSF 17. I was like, oh, this is the character I've been seeing in interviews. Sweet, I'm excited. No, not her. And then Rose itself is just another flatline character with not much character behind her, which is unfortunate. And then Rose actually stops Finn from doing something that might give him a little bit more of a character arc with him trying to abandon ship. I would like to have seen Finn go. Let Finn run away, and let's see where he ends up. That would have created a scene to maybe make a casino scene more realistic. So anyways, the casino scene as a whole doesn't need to be in this film, but if this was a standalone Star Wars film, if it was a different plot line than this film was trying to do, I wouldn't have minded the casino scene. I like seeing different parts of the worlds of Star Wars, how characters and different personalities are meshing together. I liked the idea of everyone is profiting off of this war, and it's not just the First Order profiting. The Resistance is fueling these people as much as they are. So I thought that was a really cool point. Obviously, it was a political stance. There was a lot of CGI here, though. And I remember when The Force Awakens came out, they were very much about like no CGI, as little as we can, not no CGI, but as little as we can. We want to use practical effects as whenever possible. And I remember there was an interview with J.J. Abrams where he was standing there in like kind of a Tatooine setting. It was obviously Jakku, and there was just characters walking all around him, and it was all practical characters or puppets. And you're like, that's Star Wars because it looks real, it feels real, and as a character in the movie, you're able to act better when you're around a practical effect or a puppet. Because you can actually see it, you can actually interact with it instead of looking at a green ball, and they're telling you go look at the ball because that's the face. It's so like the horses, really bad CGI. In fact, they could have done a homage back to Episode 1 and thrown pod racers in there. I would rather have seen pod racing than the horse racing because the pod racing is an already established method of racing that we know in the Star Wars universe, and it could have fit into this casino scene just as well. So I even said it in the film, I was like, ooh, pod racing. And then it was the horses running around. So I was like, dang it. I didn't mind pod racing. In fact, I'll go on the record and say I thought the prequels, by the way, were really good. Much better than people give them credit for. Another scene that was really gross was the blue milking scene. Like, what the... That made no sense. And as a child film, it was like, I was a little disturbed, like sitting there suckling on a tit. Like, what the hell was even happening here? Totally unneeded, kind of gross. The alien looks back at Rey like, you want to join in, or you can give me some privacy? The whole thing was weird. And so you take all these scenes together, and it's just too much humor, too much campy. And that's where I felt like, is this movie directed for me? The next character we have is Phasma, or the death of Phasma. Really disappointed again with what they're doing with Captain Phasma. We were already upset with the way she was handled in Force Awakens. Here's a character that was hyped up as a female officer of a stormtrooper brigade battalion who, in my opinion, too easily gave up information to Finn and Han Solo with information on the Starkiller base. I feel like Phasma would rather have died than sold out the First Order with information. And so I felt like in The Force Awakens, her character was really poorly handled, and they promised us a redemption. Even the actress promised us that this character was going to have a much better scene in this movie or character development. And we actually see her for 3 minutes, In fact, you really don't see much troopers at all because the entire movie is basically kind of a soap opera, and then the ships chasing each other. There's not much actual war happening between the First Order and the Rebellion. But then she's just gone. As soon as she starts, it's over. In fact, BB-8 has killed more people in Star Wars than Phasma. I mean, that entire scene was removed so that we can get BB-8 doing his little thing, shooting troopers as an AT-AT or ATSD rather than Phasma doing anything. Are they going to bring her back again? Probably. She makes money for Star Wars. She's cool. She's unique. And they're just not going to answer us again on how she survives. How does she survive Force Awakens? Well, you're going to have to read comic books and in books to find that out because we're not going to tell you. How does she survive falling into a ball of fire in a ship that's falling apart? Well, we're not going to tell you that because that doesn't matter. It's just like as when they're handing Luke Skywalker's saber to Rey and Finn, and Han Solo asks Maz-Kanata, where did you find that saber? And she goes, that's a story for another dime. Yeah, just like all these other stories. It's a screenwriter's way of being lazy and not having to answer questions that should be answered. So, very, very upset with the handling of Phasma. We're going to move on. Leia. So, to give you guys a little understanding of how I felt about Leia, in the trailers for Force Awakens, I legitly cried watching her because I was like, my God, she's back on screen. She's beautiful. I'm so happy to see her again. And then actually watching Force Awakens, I was not as excited as I hoped I would be watching Leia. Her voice kind of got to me. This is all me being honest here. But now let's go to this movie. And I felt like there was two things here. I felt like with her passing that as an audience member, knowing that Carrie Fisher has passed, we expected her to maybe having a death scene or a farewell scene. And I think Disney took it differently and said, we don't want to change her final performance. We want to keep it intact. I wasn't totally impressed with Leia's acting in this movie. In fact, the way they handled Leia makes no sense as a character. In fact, it destroys everything of how I perceive Force users and Jedi. I'm never going to call Leia a Jedi. I think a Jedi is a trained Force user. I've always seen Leia as Force sensitive, but not a trained user. And in terms of all the content that I've seen on television and movies and games that are actually canon, she's never been trained. Now, I did get the Leia book for Christmas, so I'll read that and learn something, but that's prior to her knowing she's Force sensitive because that's before Episode 4 even begins, so who knows. But the scene where her ship gets destroyed, the bridge, and she's spaced, that should have been the ending for Leia. There is zero reason how she as a human gets zapped into space, and she's out there for a little while, a minute, 2 minutes, who knows, long enough. She shouldn't be in space. In fact, my fiance made the comment that she thought it was a farewell because you see her face closed, her eyes are closed, the sun's hitting her, you can see the crystals on her. She looked like a space princess. She looked beautiful, and it was like a kind of a really good goodbye, kind of a cheap goodbye for Carrie Fisher. But at least it was a goodbye and it made sense and it was a way to end it. But then she freaking Mary Poppins flies. It is jarring. This scene took me out of it and I went, what the fuck is this? Jarring. She Mary Poppins through space into the cockpit and come into the bridge and then knocks and they're like, oh, okay, this is no big deal. Oh, look, there's Leia just flying through space. She's never shown signs of Force power, like in terms of being able to control it. Now, she's had sensitivity. She's been able to have a connection with people. She can sense things, which we've seen all Jedi being able to sense, say, a presence. But that doesn't mean she can pull herself through space. Go back to Luke in episode 5 when he is hung upside down in the ice cave and he's trying to pull his lightsaber to him. Think how much concentration and focus it took him to just pull the lightsaber. Imagine trying to move your body. And we also haven't really seen any, that I can think of, any situation of a Jedi user pulling themselves to something with the Force. They've either jumped with their better abilities. They can pull things to them. I know for damn right she didn't pull the ship to her. So it just didn't make sense. Really jarring, really took me out of it, and it just basically made like a what the fuck moment for the scene. In fact, they don't kill off Leia, obviously, if you've seen the movie now. And so it really asks questions of how are they going to handle it for the next movie. I really do not want to see CGI Leia. I don't want them to try to do some weird CGI to implement her in some way. If they wanted to kill her off to make her have a good ending, they should have had her be the one to fly into the enemy ships, which I also didn't like. I felt like there was better ways that the general could have handled the defense. She could have flown her ship to be physically blocking the blaster bolts for the shuttles to escape. And in fact, I really don't know why they would have even done that in the first place. You have these shuttles that have no shields and they're obviously slow. Use your ship as a shield so they can get to the planet's surface. Whatever. But then they're going to flip around and do a hyperspace jump. That creates too many problems in terms of the Star Wars lore. Now, interesting enough, I'm watching, me and my fiance are watching Star Wars, the Clone Wars series again. And there was a scene in the first season, probably around episode 18, where they need to do a hyperspace jump. Well, the shuttle that Ahsoka and Anakin are in is doing a hyperspace jump as they're docking inside of one of their Star Destroyers. And so they need to do an emergency declamp and get out. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be the first actual situation where we're going to see a ship jump inside of a ship. They don't. But at least that has been brought up in other canon before, that this would have destroyed them. But the fact of how much damage that did, because it destroyed, not only it took off the wing of the Supremacy, it destroyed, it looked like several ships behind it, as well as created a major shockwave effect. And we didn't see any much debris of her ship. Like, I feel like as soon as that ship hit that wing, it should have just crumbled. But instead it does this beautiful line. As a scene, it was beautiful. And the fact that they cut off the audio was like, it just impacts you. And you're like, man, this is a really powerful scene. I just don't know how much I liked the actual ramifications to the storyline. So we have Leia. So finally, I'm on just the ending here is Rey. Rey is really important to the story. And so I talked about how people considered her a Mary Sue. I will say in The Last Jedi, she is becoming a Mary Sue to me. A Mary Sue is someone who is powerful and good at everything just because she can be. And Rey is becoming that. With little to no training at all, Rey is becoming very, very powerful at the Force and using it without an understanding. We already had an idea that she was good at the Force without any reasonings as to why. But now she's becoming like master level with no resource training and no understanding of what she's even doing and what she's playing with. I actually would love to see Rey go to the dark side or play with the dark side elements. Do I think that Disney will do that with their heroine, their lead character? I don't think so. But I love the idea that Rey is so emotional and she's kind of not all secure with herself because of her parents. That she has some vulnerabilities, and I would love to see her have some sway to the dark side. But yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because the actress who plays Rey, I can't think of her name right now, she's actually stated that she doesn't want to continue being Rey after this trilogy is over. She doesn't want to do side missions or side movies or TV shows. Like, she wants to be done with it. I think that's interesting. And she also claimed that there's a lot of sexism and feminism against her because people are calling her Mary Sue, which I thought was a little interesting because You are Mary Sue. So that's my feeling with Rey. But why is Rey who she is? What's her family origin? As I mentioned at the top of the show, family is everything. Rey, as we know, has some sort of connection to the Skywalker family, or to Obi-Wan Kenobi, or some sort. It could even be the Palpatine or Snoke. Who knows? Some way Rey is related. To wrap up, though, I had some information on Finn and Rose. I already talked about most of that stuff earlier. Really disliked the way they took Finn in this episode. They really are making the guy feel like incompetent and not really willing to take risks or to be himself. In fact, the only scene that I felt like he was going to actually be himself, Rose stops him from doing it. And then this forced relationship between Rose and Finn. They've known each other like 12 hours. She's already in love with him. Doesn't even know who he was prior to that. I felt like that whole relationship and stuff just didn't fit for me. And then the whole AT-AT scene, I felt like Finn should at least had died there, sacrificed himself, proved to the rebellion and to the audience that this cause is worth sacrificing himself for. Somehow Rose stops him from doing that, and we get this crash scene where she looks up at him and she says I love you, and and then dies or passes out. And the entire time there's like 12 AT-AT gorilla guys looking down at him, like not blasting them away. That makes no frickin' sense. They should have just been taken out immediately. And how they even got back into the complex when they're telling us there's only one entrance in or out. But somehow Finn and Rose get through the door without just getting totally blown away. Their whole thing is being forced. And then to wrap up the ending, obviously with Luke Skywalker, and his moment with Kylo, I felt like, again, another situation of done improperly. We see some foreshadowing with Luke's T-65 X-Wing in the water. I thought we were going to have this amazing return of Luke coming in on his X-Wing, landing, having a showdown with Kylo Ren, and then maybe doing the exact same thing that Obi-Wan Kenobi did, with Vader, saying, "You strike me down, I will become more powerful than you've ever imagined." And, they're already okay showing us that they're going to replay the past movies. I would have rather have seen that than what we got, which was some hologram projection through space with Luke not being there, and then he dies while looking off into the sunset. It just didn't make sense. Here's a character that we've loved forever. For 30 years. We've been waiting to have him come back. And again, just a really poor way of ending it. I think they could have done a lot more. So this was my review opinion of The Last Jedi. What was your guys' opinion of the movie? Did you like it? Would you have liked to see more? Are you excited for the new trilogy that Rian Johnson has gotten after this? Because he's going to be doing 3 more movies. What's your guys' opinion? Hope to hear soon. Have a great day. Keep flying.